In the over 12 years of the existence of the Kumekucha blog, many people have learned to trust the blog with their stories. Yeah, some of the stories are very sensitive, some of the stories are very sad, like the one I'm about to share today. This of course is part of our ongoing series on YouTube, Classic Kumekucha Tales. And I will tell this Matatu nightmare in the words of the person, just as she wrote in. The exact words she used in her story. Here goes. When I boarded the Matatu headed for my rural home in Nyeri that fateful day in 2001, it never crossed my mind that there was such great horror ahead of me and the other female passengers in that vehicle. If anything, it had been very reassuring that a thorough search had been carried out on all passengers prior to our boarding that Matatu at the popular Nyamakima bus stage in downtown Nairobi. Matatu jackings had become too common in those days, and this precaution was very reassuring because it meant that there was nobody on board carrying a gun, or so I thought. The journey was uneventful until we were a few kilometers from reaching our destination. A very young man that you'd never suspect, who was seated at the front of the Nissan minibus next to the driver, asked the driver to drop him off at a very dark remote place on the main road. It sounded like a reasonable request. After all, it was now dark and it made sense for someone to be dropped off as close as possible to where they were going. Although the place was so dark that it didn't look like anybody lived anywhere close for miles around. The minute the vehicle stopped, there was a commotion at the back and three other young men, they couldn't have been more than 19 years old, emerged brandishing guns. I was seated around the middle of the Matatu and I froze in sheer horror and went numb. Everything started to happen in a hallucinatory way, like it was happening to somebody else or in some movie. There had been a total of 4 carjackers in the Matatu. Actually, there were a total of 4 carjackers in the Matatu. They took over the vehicle and drove off the main road into the bush for several minutes. We finally stopped in what appeared to be a small clearing. They proceeded to swiftly rob passengers of all their valuables at gunpoint. Wallets, mobile phones, and all sorts of valuables were all put inside a makeshift sack they had fashioned from several shirts belonging to passengers. But the nightmare was only just beginning. All passengers were then asked to strip naked, and our clothes were all put in one large heap. We stood there shivering out of fright and the chilly night air. We were then ordered at gunpoint to have sex with each other. I saw at least 2 of the gangsters also involved in the rape of passengers, but they used condoms, which were later recovered from the scene of the crime by the police. It was terrible. At least 2 people penetrated me. One, an elderly man who was stinking of sweat. It was all too horrible to imagine, let alone be involved in. It continued for what looked like forever. Finally, we realized that the gangsters had left, with our clothes as well, so that it was difficult for us to seek help. My normal senses started returning to me, slowly, and I had these terrible feelings that are difficult to describe. I felt filthy and violated. There was this deep fear in me. What would my husband say? Had I contracted AIDS? It was horror. It was sheer horror that did not leave me and will probably never leave me completely. Even today, I can't bring myself to talk about it. This experience of writing it down is the first time I've really described it in any detail. I've never gone for any AIDS test to date, although we were all treated at the district hospital and given medication. I am no longer with my husband as a result of this incident, although he supports me and the children. I have no idea how the guns were discovered in the search. I have no idea how the guns were never discovered in the search carried out prior to the beginning of our journey. That sad tale ends there. Very sad. Now there's also an editor's note, or the blogger's note, where he said, or rather it was me, I was talking about gang rape and forced sex during Matatu carjackings, and even during robberies in homes, being a menace in Kenya today. Actually it is. And although it has dramatically reduced from the high statistics of 2000 and 2002, What really makes it worse is that most cases actually go unreported or are reported days later, and often in very scanty detail. Actually, in the same year we carried this particular incident, there was another horrifying incident in Nairobi, somewhere along Ngong Road, where a matatu that was carrying mainly nurses going off duty was matatu jacked or carjacked, however you want to call it. The vehicle was later abandoned somewhere in Kangware, where people going to work the next morning came across condoms scattered all over the road and the floor of this matatu, Nissan Matatu. This is a very sick, bizarre and inhuman crime, and it's still a mystery where the origins or the motivations of it ever came from in our beautiful country. Some people point to the increased use of drugs, hard drugs, and exposure to internet sex, some of which has violent tendencies, as possible causes, but it is still a mystery. Very, very terrible incident, and this is just part of the Kumekucha classics. Till next time, this is Chris Kumekucha.